Welcome to our daily reflection for this Thursday, March 28th. And of course, this evening is the Holy Thursday evening Mass of the Lord's Supper. And it really starts the Triduum, which is going to be these last 3 days of our Lord all the way up to Easter. And so here on Holy Thursday night, Jesus is going to celebrate the Passover. And that's why we begin with a reading from the book of Exodus to give us that historical background for what Jesus does. As he celebrates the Passover with his disciples, we go back in time to hear about the Passover and how it requires the sacrifice of a lamb, how they have to eat the flesh of the lamb, have unleavened bread, and that gives us the setting and the historical background. In fact, because the angel of the Lord will pass through Egypt that night, after they celebrate the Passover, they put the blood on the doorposts, which means the Lord will pass over their house. The angel of death will spare their eldest son so that the firstborn eldest son of the family will not die. And it's a night of watching, we're told, in Exodus 12, verse 42 and 43, that will be a perpetual vigil and a festival for Israel's history, that it'll be a night of watching and prayer. In fact, after Jesus celebrates this meal, he goes to the Garden of Gethsemane to what? To spend the night in watching and praying, which is exactly the Exodus tradition. And of course, then the disciples fall asleep when they're supposed to be watching and in vigil. And then what happens? The angel of death comes at midnight, and that's actually when the angel of death comes in the Exodus story is midnight. And at midnight, in the third watch of the midnight hour, Judas comes, and Judas will have the role of the angel of death. And there will not be a passing over of God's firstborn son. He will be the lamb who will be sacrificed. And so all that Passover background, all that Exodus background is really important backdrop to understand the actions and the events that unfold on Holy Thursday evening. And we get the gospel reading from John 13. And John, whose gospel is written after all the other gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, he fills in and what the synoptic gospels don't tell us. And so he's going, the synoptic gospels talk about Jesus, and he offers up the bread and the wine in thanksgiving, and he makes this a new covenant in his blood. Well, John knows that, okay, you've all heard that, but I want to highlight the other element that got missed. And whenever there's a new covenant, there's also a new law and a new priesthood. And so the new priesthood will be Jesus washing the disciples and consecrating them for priestly service. And more will that unfold throughout the Gospel of John there. But then the other element is a new law. And Jesus will say in John 13, after the supper, a new law, a new commandment I give you, love one another as I have loved you. And right before he gives that new commandment, he embodies that commandment in a very symbolic but important action that we always commemorate on Holy Thursday evening Mass, and that is the washing of the disciples' feet. Jesus, who is the leader, the rabbi, the most revered and honored of the group, takes the lowest position and role, that of a slave or the youngest child, by washing the feet of the disciples. And so he says, I've given you a model, and what I've done for you, you should do for one another, right? And so in other words, the washing of feet shows humble service, and that's what love, that's what charity is always impelled and compelled to do for others. And so what is this? How do we know if we're living the new covenant and its new law of love? And to the extent that we find ourselves in humble service to others. That is the measure of our charity and of our love. And Jesus gives us the great demonstration. The one who sits upon the right hand of the throne of the Father in heaven leaves that throne in glory to come down and not to be ministered to, but to minister and serve. This is extraordinary. It's an extraordinary love. It's an extraordinary God, and we should be moved deeply. And when you go to the Mass this evening of the Lord's Last Supper, hear these Exodus connotations. See the love of Christ and this great commandment of love that he's showing before he even tells it, and reflect in that vigil, because usually after the Mass, there's a little bit of a vigil, a time for prayer and maybe adoration. and spend that time watching and praying. You know, Jesus complained to Peter, James, and John, "Could you not watch 1 hour with me?" Let us watch this evening for an hour, perhaps, with our Lord, and keep vigil with him to console his heart and to show him that we do love him and we want to serve him. May the Lord bless and keep you.
This daily reflection is brought to you thanks to the generous support of the Mission Circle. Join the Mission Circle to help Catholics worldwide understand, live, and share their faith. Sign up at missioncircle.org today.